Dottie Alexander lurched forward as her social worker bounced the van over the curb. The social worker, Hallie, pulled into the Stansfield's driveway at 217 Brickback Road, having to brake too hard and lurching Dottie forward again. Dottie didn't think she would ever get used to riding in cars, although, after observing other vehicles on the roads for the last 4 months, she wondered if she might have a better experience riding with someone other than Hallie. Neither of her previous 2 foster families had driven her anywhere. They were both justifiably nervous about introducing her to the modern world. Hallie had warned them about Dottie's prior reactions to simple things such as cars, cell phones, and cameras. "We just want to help you get more adjusted first," her previous guardians had invariably said. Dottie inevitably perturbed both couples, who also had children of their own, leading them both to ask Hallie to find a new placement. The Stansfields would be her 3rd foster family, and she did not expect them to be her last. She knew Hallie did not believe her when she said she was trying to fit in, but how could she expect to fit in when all she had known for 14 years was hard work, discipline, and servitude toward a higher power, and all these people knew was the pursuit of ease and pleasure? Her entire life, Dottie had been raised to see those types of people as lesser vermin on Earth, consuming God's wonderful bounty and corrupting his beautiful planet. She was beginning to understand that was wrong because she had also seen how kind and understanding these people could be. But now, it was they who seemed unable to see the wonderful facets of her. "Oops, almost missed the driveway there," Hallie chuckled. Her eyelashes were too long, and for some reason she didn't have eyebrows, so she painted them on instead. Hallie was plagued by the sin of gluttony, but Dottie now understood that was not considered a sin in this new world. She saw many people proudly displaying the burden of its consequences. Hallie said, "Well, here we go. These people are very nice." "They are all very nice, aren't they?" asked Dottie. Hallie gave her a forgiving smile. She recognized Dottie's particularly dry brand of sarcasm. The Stansfields opened their door and greeted Dottie in a quaint Midwestern manner that she genuinely appreciated. "I'm Bill, and this is Patrick," the father said, planting his hands on his 6 or 7-year-old son's shoulders. The mother said, "I'm Monica. You must be Dottie." She extended her hand, but awkwardly retracted it when Dottie curtsied instead, fanning the lacy hem of her dress outward. The rest of the handoff went equally as awkward, but Dottie still thought she liked the Stansfields very much. Hallie made sure Dottie was settled while Bill retrieved her single suitcase of belongings, namely 3 duplicates of the dress she was currently wearing and a few pieces of everything she needed to wear beneath it. The Stansfields lived in an immaculate house. A curving staircase led from the entryway to an exposed hallway above with 2 doors visible from the ground level. Beneath the banister, another doorway, this one empty, led to a sunlit living room with an open kitchen to one side, separated only by a gorgeous brick fireplace and chimney. The carpet and upholstery were all white, and the coffee table made of glass. The only color in the room came from the leaves of 2 broad-leafed plants in the back corners. With the sunlight pouring in through the back patio door, the room was almost blinding, but Dottie loved it. The upstairs bedroom designated for her also had white carpet, a white bed frame, and white curtains, but her sheets were dark blue, matching the walls. Hers was one of the rooms at the top of the stairs, the one on the left. To the right was the upstairs bathroom, and down the hall were Patrick's and Bill and Monica's rooms. A short time after Hallie left, Patrick opened his bedroom door, and an orange blur nearly knocked his feet out from under him. The blur streaked down the stairs, thudding without caution to the bottom, where Dottie was just picking up her suitcase to carry it upstairs. She screamed. "Hey, what's wrong?" Monica asked, hustling through the doorway under the banister wearing an apron. "There's an animal," Dottie whimpered. "What is it?" "That's Arya," Patrick cheerfully announced from above. "You named it?" Dottie asked. She noticed a faint smile pulling at Monica's lips before the mother turned away slightly. She regained control of her features and turned back to Dottie, implementing a kind smile and soft eyes. "Dottie, have you ever seen a cat before? A cat like a lion? Dottie asked. This time, Monica made no effort to hide her laughter, but Dottie did not feel insulted by it. Her laugh contained too much joy to be offensive. Before she realized it, Dottie started laughing along with her. I'm sorry, I'm not making fun of you, Monica said. It's just, well, there's obviously a lot for you to learn. Dottie looked away. I'm sorry. No, please don't apologize, Monica said. I'm sorry. I guess I just didn't realize. Did they not have any cats at the cult? Dottie asked. Both Monica and Patrick suddenly looked very uncomfortable. Sorry, is that a bad word? I keep hearing people say it when they talk about my home. She lived in a cult? Patrick asked, bent at the hips over the banister. No, it's not a bad word at all, Monica said. And Patrick, I'll let Dottie tell you about where she grew up when she's ready, okay? For now, let's get back to this cat thing. Arya the cat had started weaving in and out of Dottie's legs, under her dress. She looked visibly uncomfortable, but something deep down told Monica to let her be, let her adjust. She had almost immediately recognized a buried strength and resilience behind Dottie's eyes when she arrived. Dottie asked, So, what is a cat for? We aren't going to eat it, are we? No way, she's my pet, Patrick explained. That means we play together and she keeps me company, and at night she... He trailed off, looking uncomfortable. You keep an animal in your home for company? Dottie asked. In return, Monica asked, Have you ever had a pet before? We only used animals for food, clothes, and work at home, Dottie said. I've never heard of anyone caring for an animal for pleasure. It can be a lot of work, but it's fun, Patrick assured her. Monica hid another smirk. She guessed her son's idea of a lot of work would pale in comparison to Dottie's. Dottie collected her skirt around her knees and stooped to observe the docile animal. Arya took 3 cautious steps backward. She'll let you pet her if you want, said Patrick. Dottie held out one hand, hovering it in front of Arya's face. She sniffed at Dottie's fingers, then nuzzled her head into Dottie's palm. Dottie smiled so broadly her jaw almost fell off. She ran her hand down Arya's back, all the way down her tail, then started again with her other hand on Arya's neck. The cat began to purr and rubbed against Dottie's shins. In the back of the house, a door slid shut, and Bill's cheery voice declared, Burgers are ready. Dottie thought she was going to like staying with the Stansfields. Bill and Monica really made her feel like a part of the family instead of a guest. At the dinner table, they made her feel so comfortable that when Patrick started asking questions about her home, she felt not only willing, but excited to answer. We didn't have any screens or internet, she said, pronouncing internet the way she heard it when people said it. Every morning, Morrow would give us a message. Then I spent most of my day doing chores, like laundry and tending the gardens or caring for the animals. And in the time left at the end of the day, I read. Who's Morrow? Asked Patrick. Morrow Walker was our leader, a prophet from God sent to show us how to live a holy life. A what? Patrick asked. Monica quickly changed the subject. What kind of books do you like? You're welcome to see what we have, or I can pick up some at the library, she offered. Dottie replied, I'm sorry? Books. What kind of books do you like to read? Monica repeated. Oh, my favorite is probably Matthew. I love the poems and Psalms, though, and I memorized most of Proverbs. Dottie, said Bill, have you ever read something besides the Bible? Dottie wrung her hands. No. I'd never seen another book until after they took me away. Who took you away? Patrick asked. Monica said, The police, honey. The people Dottie used to live with had to go to jail, so that's why she's staying with us. Why? Patrick asked. How about we talk about that another time? Bill said, smiling in dissonance with his imperative tone. In the meantime, Monica, get this girl some Harry Potter stat. And while you're at it, well, Dottie, I should probably ask you first. Would you like some more, modern clothes? We're about the same size, said Monica. You're welcome to try on a few of my things. Dottie had been eyeing the comfortable-looking shirt Monica was wearing. Her scratchy homemade dresses were all she'd ever known, and the previous families she had stayed with never pressed her to try anything else. She was already over the shock of seeing women wearing pants, some so tight you could see the outline of their buttocks. Dottie had no desire to display her rear end. She could not comprehend why anyone would. But she thought some of the baggier pants she had seen looked both practical and comfortable, which she had to remind herself did not make them sinful. Yes, she said, allowing the faintest of smiles to grace her lips. I'd like that very much. But please, could you tell me, what is a Harry Potter? The first clothing Dottie borrowed from Monica was a set of faux silk pajamas. She had already grown somewhat accustomed to the soft mattresses and plushy blankets modern people used. She felt like she was drowning in them for the first few nights away from home, but on her first night at the Stansfields, she found the bed comfortable and inviting, and the pajamas added an extra layer of comfort. She drifted off with relative ease. In the middle of the night, Dottie awoke to a commotion she, in her foggy state, could not immediately make sense of. A thud vibrated her door, which she kept ajar in the way she had been required to in her previous life, and caused it to swing open. A dark shape low to the ground darted through the door, aimed at her bed. Before she could sit all the way up, the dark shape pounced onto the mattress right next to her leg, then leapt at her, landing on her chest. She uttered a small shriek before realizing the dark shape was only Arya the cat. But her fright was never given a chance to settle, because down the hall, she heard Patrick scream. A visitor in a strange house, Dottie waited and observed in silence. The hallway light turned on and someone went into Patrick's room. Dottie heard Monica's soothing voice. She did not sound alarmed, so Dottie decided not to be either. She waited for the next expected sound, the cold, taut skin of Monica's palm snapping against Patrick's soft, warm cheek. But it never came. Dottie reminded herself that children were coddled in this new world. No, not coddled. She reminded herself also that she needed to reframe her views of punishment because she rather liked the modern version of parents as caregivers, educators, and, yes, disciplinarians when necessary, but always with smart and relevant punishments, not senseless beatings. Even when Patrick yelled something Dottie could not decipher, Monica did not raise her own voice. Footsteps preceded a long shadow in the hall. Dottie knew it must be Bill coming to check out her open door and perhaps find out where Arya went. Ah, he said, filling her doorway. I wondered if he woke you up. Actually, it was her, Dottie said, transplanting Arya from her lap to the floor. The cat padded out of the room. Bill said, Well, sorry about that. Don't worry about Patrick. He gets these night terrors, I guess you'd call them. He thinks he sees monsters. You know, like a lot of kids. Dottie flashed to a memory of her best friend being held down by her mother and father as Mara Walker performed an exorcism on her. The reason for this display was due entirely to the girl claiming to have seen a monster climbing out from beneath her bed. The girl's claim was immediately prosecuted as a symptom of demonic possession. Mr. Please, just call me Bill. Okay, Bill. Is Patrick... I'm not really sure if it means the same to you, but is he pure? Of heart? Bill looked down the hall and said, he's a good kid. Not sure if that's what you mean, though. Essentially, Dottie replied. But is there any chance that evil spirits might be interested in him? Straight to evil spirits, huh? Bill echoed, clucking dismissively. No, Dottie, there's no such thing as evil spirits. Or monsters, for that matter. I'm sure you've been taught otherwise, but it's okay, said Dottie. I'm still realizing just how much of what I was raised to believe is false. Bill said, Must be tough. All right, well, good night then. But before he completely shut the door, he paused and pushed it back open. He bit the inside of his cheek in thought, then carefully said, Hey, this thing with Patrick, could you please just let Monica and I handle it on our own? We have a bit of a strategy we've been working with, and we've seen some good progress here and there. I'd really like to keep the momentum going, you know? It's nothing personal, it's just, I think it would be better if you didn't discuss this topic with Patrick, okay? I understand, Dottie replied. She did understand. She'd had the same conversation using different words with 2 sets of foster parents already. Hey, we really love having you, but please don't interfere with our family dynamic. We're perfectly happy as we are, thank you. Bill said, Thanks, and shut the door. The following morning, everyone behaved as if nothing had happened, which informed Dottie that Patrick's midnight outburst was a common occurrence. All day, Dottie watched him for signs of spiritual corruption, but she detected none. Not that she was an expert on corruption. Not like Marl Walker, prophet leader of the Moravian Christians. He was able to suss out someone with a demonic attachment before they even displayed harmful symptoms. Dottie always believed in his gift as an asset from God. However, throughout her second day with the Stansfields, she began to think more about Morrow's exiles and realized he never sent women away from the group, only men. Specifically, Dottie could only recall him banishing married men. He always provided for their wives by taking them into his own home. She had been living in Morrow's constructed world, seeing everything through his framing. Now outside, she realized what might have actually been going on. The Stansfields did what no other family had done for her yet and took her out in public. Both parents had taken the week off to help Dottie settle in. They only went to an apple orchard, but still, there were modern people walking around, driving trucks and tractors, eating snacks from the little shop. Unbeknownst to Bill and Monica, tending the fruit trees was one of Dottie's chores back home. When she shared this with them, Bill recoiled, and Monica put a loving hand on her shoulder. She sounded like she might cry as she said, We thought it would just be a fun way to get out without being around too many people. I'm so sorry. We didn't mean to trigger any bad memories. No, just the opposite, Dottie assured her. It reminds me of the good parts of home. Bill recovered and said, Well, here's to making new memories. Back at the house, Monica enlisted Patrick and Dottie's help in baking some of the apples into a crisp. She was impressed, albeit slightly uncomfortable, with Dottie's baking knowledge and skills. She guessed the girl had been trained in the kitchen her entire life. They baked the crisp and enjoyed it after dinner while watching Toy Story. It was only the second movie Dottie had ever seen, having watched The Lion King at another home, and Bill insisted she must see it immediately. The day ended on this happy note, and everyone went to their rooms in good moods. Dottie sat on her bed reading the first pages of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, with the door cracked open, as always. It took her a few minutes to shed the guilt she felt for reading words written for no purpose other than enjoyment, but once she deprogrammed herself, she found the book quite enjoyable. She heard Patrick leave his room and go to the bathroom next door. After he washed his hands, he opened the bathroom door, flooding the hallway with yellow light. Dottie could see his shadow across the floor as he stood in the bathroom doorway. Over 10 seconds passed without Patrick turning off the bathroom light or making any movement whatsoever. Dottie closed her book and went to check on him. She found him staring at his dark bedroom down the hall with his back to her, so he did not notice her approach. "Patrick?" she whispered. He flinched and turned around. She saw he had either been crying or perhaps was about to start. Puffy redness encircled his eyes. Whispering, she asked, "What's wrong?" His chest heaved before he said, "I don't want to go back to my room. If I fall asleep in there, the nightmare monsters are going to come out." "Nightmare monsters? Is that why you were screaming last night? Dottie asked. Yeah, I always see them when I wake up at night. Sometimes I try to just stay awake, but I always fall asleep. Then they come. Dottie's forehead and armpits suddenly felt sweaty. She recalled Bill's entreaty to her not to discuss the thing with Patrick, and to let his parents handle it. But Bill and Monica were closed up in their room, and Patrick was standing right in front of her with tears in his eyes. What was she supposed to do? Patrick continued, They start in my head, then they come into my good dreams and turn them into nightmares, and when I wake up, they're here. Oh, this is serious, Dottie thought. He needs spiritual protection, but his parents don't believe in it. What do the monsters do then? She asked, keeping her voice as low as humanly possible. They move really slowly when they're not in my dreams, said Patrick. I always try to run to Mom before they can get me. Sometimes they block the door, so I have to scream like last night. He looked down, ashamed, and said, Sorry if I woke you up. Dottie got down on one knee, eye to eye with the boy. She placed her hands on the sides of his shoulders, looked into his eyes, then drew him in for a hug. She whispered in his ear, I believe you. And Patrick hugged her back. He pushed off of her after a few seconds and said, I have an idea, but can you come with me? Okay, but let's be quiet in case your parents are already sleeping, Dottie said, really just not wanting Bill and Monica to know she had involved herself in the thing with Patrick. He led her down the hall to his room. She turned on the light for him as he hurried over to a large chest next to his closet. After digging around for over a minute, he finally pulled out a strange-looking phone. Of course, all phones looked strange to Dottie, but this one in particular was unlike any she had seen yet. After a little more digging, Patrick pulled a matching device out and closed the chest. These are called walkie-talkies. Do you know what those are? Walkie-talkies? Dottie repeated. She might have laughed at the silly name if she hadn't been so afraid of catching Bill and Monica's attention. Patrick said, Yeah, I know it sounds dumb, but they're really cool. We can use them to talk to each other. See? Like this. He turned a small dial at the top of both devices, and a red power light lit up on each. An evil screech came out of both of them. Dottie quickly closed the door, stopping before it latched. Whoops, Patrick said, moving the devices away from each other. As soon as they were separated, the screeching stopped. Here. He handed a walkie to Dottie, who put it to her ear the way she had observed people talking on cell phones. No, you hold it in front of your mouth like this, he demonstrated. When you want to talk, you push the button and just talk. Just make sure you let go when you're done, because otherwise my voice won't go through. Dottie pressed the button indicated by Patrick, raised the walkie to her lips, and asked, Can you hear me? She heard her own voice come from the walkie in Patrick's hand, rough and full of static, and grinned. Wow, she said. Pretty cool, right? You take that one to your room and I'll keep this one here. That way I can talk to you. But why can't we just talk like this? Dottie asked. Oh, said Patrick. I meant, if the nightmare monsters come, I can call you to come help me. Oh, and one more thing. He went to his bed, stuck a hand beneath his pillow, and pulled out an unused glow stick. I always keep a few of these under my pillow because the monsters can turn off the lights. It's really scary. Anyway, if you need to use this, you just bend it like you're going to break it. It'll make a bunch of awesome cracking sounds, then it'll glow. They're super bright. Here you go. He gave her the glow stick. Dottie dropped to her knee again to give him a compassionate look. She said, Patrick, I think you need to talk to your parents about this. Your dad told me they'll never believe me, he interrupted. I've told them over and over again that the monsters are real, but they won't listen. I'm pretty sure Mom even saw them once. Dottie stared at the walkie-talkie in her hand. Accepting it also meant accepting partial responsibility for Patrick's safety and full responsibility for disobeying her foster parents. She could be putting herself on the fast track to another home, and she liked living with the Stansfields. But still, looking into Patrick's pleading eyes, she could not turn him down. She helped him settle into bed, then returned to her room, walkie-talkie in hand. The same thud against her door which had awoken her the first night did so the second. This time, Dottie anticipated Arya jumping on her bed and moved out of the cat's way. She listened carefully to the silence, searching for any slight disturbance which might indicate happenings down the hall. She heard nothing coming from down the hall, but the walkie-talkie next to her bed buzzed to life, startling her. The static crackled and hissed, masking any words being spoken. Dottie picked it up and turned the volume dial back in order to listen for Patrick's voice through the walls. She could not tell whether he was trying to speak to her or not, but even with the volume down, listening for her foster brother with her naked ear, Dottie did not hear him. At a break in the transmission, Dottie depressed the talk button and put the device to her lips. "Patrick, is that you?" she asked. Silence lingered for 5, 6, 7 seconds before the walkie crackled to life again. This time, Dottie heard breathing coming through. Long, rattling breaths, which sounded much too deep to belong to little Patrick. She slipped off of the bed, looking back to see if Arya would follow her. Arya stayed put, nested in the warm covers Dottie left behind. The cat clearly wanted nothing to do with whatever was happening down the hall. Dottie treaded to her door and peeked out at Patrick's, which was closed. Midway through a breath, her walkie stopped transmitting, and silence returned. Now, standing in the hallway, Dottie raised it again and asked, "Patrick, are you awake?" Through his door, she heard herself echo faintly. It sounded like Patrick had turned his volume up quite high. Hearing her echo also made her think she should definitely be able to hear Patrick's voice through his door if he really was trying to talk to her. Her walkie hissed again, and she heard more deep breathing coming through. This time, it preceded a harsh, whispering voice, which said, "He's still sleeping." Dropping the device in alarm, Dottie ran to Patrick's door. She turned the knob, but found it locked. Why would he lock his door if he wanted me to come help him? Dottie wondered. This question was just one of a dozen which raced through her mind like frames of a film strip blurring into a single image. In this case, instead of an image, her thoughts and questions amalgamated into a single imperative. Wake Patrick up. "Patrick! Patrick!" Dottie yelled, slapping her palm on his door. She heard disturbances in Bill and Monica's bedroom as they were startled awake. However, she could not hear any sounds coming from Patrick's. She yelled for him again. "What's going on?" Monica asked, emerging from her room, still tying her robe shut. "There's someone in there with Patrick. I heard him talking," Dottie explained. "Move, move," Bill ordered, ushering her aside with firm hands on her upper arms. "Patrick, are you awake?" he asked. "Patrick, can you hear me?" "His door is locked," said Dottie. Bill immediately tried the knob to confirm this. "Bill, he would never lock that door," said Monica. "I know. Do you have your phone?" "No." "Can you go get it? I want somebody ready to call 911. "What's that?" Dottie asked. "Not now," Bill replied. He flattened his ear against the door to listen for any sounds from within. "You said somebody's in there?" he asked urgently. Dottie nodded. "How do you know?" Dottie showed him the walkie-talkie and said, "He gave me this, and somebody talked to me through it." "That's it," said Bill. He rammed his shoulder into the door. It barely rattled. Bill stepped back, raised his right foot in the air, and kicked forward, connecting right beside the doorknob. There was a dry, splitting sound, but the door remained standing. "Patrick, answer me," Bill yelled before his next kick. This time, the knob bent inward. It returned to its normal position as the door settled back in place, but Bill quickly followed up with a third kick, which broke the wood around the knob. The door slammed against the stop inside Patrick's room. "He's not here," Bill yelled to Monica, who had just returned with her phone in hand. She gasped. "What?" "Okay, I'm calling." "Patrick?" Bill yelled. He yanked the covers off of the boy's bed, revealing an empty mattress. Dottie shrunk back, terrified and unsure where she fit in this situation. Monica, phone raised to her ear, said, "Check under the bed, Bill," and trotted over to Patrick's closet. "Yes, hello? I'm at 217 Brickback Road. We can't find my son. He's 7 and... Oh my God." Monica had just opened Patrick's closet. "Oh my God, he's here. I found him. It's okay. No, we don't need you to send anybody. I'm so sorry. Yes. Yes, it is. Thank you. Goodbye." Monica lowered the phone and embraced Patrick, who she had found standing in his closet with his back to the door. Even as she hugged him, the boy stood completely still, facing away from them all. "Hey, could you maybe go back to your room?" Bill asked Dottie. "What about the voice I heard?" Dottie asked. "I'm sure we'll find an explanation, but for now, please just go back to bed." "Is he going to be okay?" Bill started to sound frustrated now. "Yes, Dottie, he'll be fine. Do you remember what I said to you last night about letting Monica and I handle this? Now would be the time." This final snipe sprung tears into Dottie's eyes. She turned away before Bill would notice and returned to her room without another word. Dottie slept in the next morning, having not been able to return to sleep quickly the night before. She noticed Patrick staring at her, clearly wanting to tell her something, but Bill or Monica was always close by like they were guarding him. Finally, there came a moment in the kitchen, just after Bill left to pick up everything he needed to repair Patrick's door, when Monica received a phone call. She excused herself to take the call outside on the porch. "Please tell me what happened last night," Dottie finally begged. Patrick's eyes drifted over her shoulder to the patio door. Deciding it was safe to talk, he whispered, "They almost got me that time. For some reason, I kept dreaming until... If Mom didn't open that closet..." "I heard it," Dottie said. "I heard its voice on the walkie thing you gave me. When I tried to call you, it said, 'He's still sleeping.' Dottie, I'm really scared. I know. I'm trying to decide what to do next. I don't think your parents..." She paused, sure she had just heard her name through the kitchen window, which had been left open a crack. Monica must not have noticed. She was standing right below the window, speaking into her phone at conversational volume. Dottie snuck over to listen. "No, it's not that we don't like her. In fact, we really do. It's just, I'm worried about how Patrick is adjusting. His night terrors have been off the charts since Dottie got here. No, I understand. But also, she's been trying to undermine us. And I'm not being paranoid. She's convinced that Patrick is, haunted or something. But then he's screaming or locked in his closet, and does she come get us? No. She just talks to him behind our backs afterward and plays into his delusions. I don't know, Hallie. It just might not be good for Patrick to have her here." Dottie stepped back, shocked to hear these unfair and exaggerated accusations leveled against her. It challenged her entire idea of who she was, which was already quite malleable due to her upbringing, which heavily discouraged personal identity. Bill and Monica essentially ignored the children for the rest of the day. Bill spent most of the afternoon working on the door, and Monica sequestered herself in various rooms throughout the house in a manner which suggested she was intentionally avoiding Dottie. She kept Patrick with her much of the time as well. If Bill wasn't working on the door, and Monica wasn't with Patrick, the two of them would hide themselves away for private discussions. Dottie spent most of the day reading Harry Potter, reaching the 3rd book in the series. The Sorcerer's Stone and the Chamber of Secrets turned out to be much lighter reading than Ezekiel and Leviticus, which allowed her to consume them effortlessly. That night, Dottie went to bed worried. She feared what would happen if Patrick was attacked again. She now knew Bill and Monica held contradictory expectations for her and could not decide how to handle them. On one hand, Monica had complained about her attempts to understand Patrick's affliction and help him through it the best way she knew how, but on the other, she was disappointed in Dottie's lack of action. So which was it? Was she supposed to help or stay out? And what if Bill and Monica were wrong? What if Patrick's life really was being threatened by creatures that emerged from his nightmares? Wrestling with this confusion tired her, and after some time sweating on top of the sheets, she got up and went to her bedroom door. She held the knob in her hand, twisting the lock back and forth between her thumb and index finger. She thought about how her misadventures in the middle of the night always began, with the cat running in and waking her up. Maybe it was time to try sleeping with the door closed. She shut it gently, so as not to be heard down the hall. She pinched the lock, hesitated, then turned it. Determined to sleep through the night, to keep herself out of the situation with Patrick, and hopefully work her way back into favor with Bill and Monica before they had her removed, Dottie went back to bed. This time, she was awoken by a needy scratching at her door. This faint sound did not have the same startling effect as the cat darting in and jumping on the bed, so Dottie woke slowly. At first, she forgot where she was. She had just woken from a dream about home and expected to see the plain, brown walls of her old room when she opened her eyes. Instead, she saw the blue walls of her room at the Stansfields, which looked pitch black at night. Arya scratched at the door again, and Dottie came fully into the present. She heard the cat mewing outside her door and, fearing she might wake the rest of the family, rose to let her in. When Dottie opened the door, Arya's back was arched, her tail stiff, and her fur standing on end. Dottie crouched next to her and pet her into silence, then listened for any sounds coming from down the hall. She heard only one faint sniffle, and that only barely. She picked Arya up and treaded carefully toward Patrick's door. The closer she got, she could hear more sounds of his crying. He whimpered and sniffled, breaking Dottie's heart. She thought she had felt alone, but now she imagined the feeling of isolation Patrick must have been experiencing and could no longer pity herself. She knocked gently on his door, which was somehow closed despite Arya escaping through it. She whispered, "Patrick?" And the whimpering ceased. "Hold on," his small voice replied. Dottie heard his sheets rustle, then the soft thud of his feet hitting the ground. He padded over to the door. Dottie heard the doorknob rattle when he grabbed it, but before Patrick could open the door, he screamed. Dottie dropped Arya and tried to open the door herself, but in his terror, Patrick had fallen against it. She couldn't push it open. "Patrick, get out of there!" she yelled. Based on his screams, she knew he had slid down the door all the way to the floor. She could picture him curled up in a ball there as some dark thing crawled out of his closet. "Bill! Monica!" Dottie screamed, now turning to bang on their bedroom door. Maybe, she thought, Bill would be strong enough to push his way in. She didn't care if they would send her away anymore. Her only concern was for Patrick. Arya began scratching at Patrick's door, and Dottie returned her attention there. "Please, Patrick, you have to move," she yelled. The master bedroom door opened. Bill and Monica, both in bathrobes, emerged. "Move out of my way," Bill bellowed. He shoved Dottie so hard her back hit the wall behind her. He shouted Patrick's name as he tried to open the door. His initial attempts failed against Patrick's weight, but he planted his shoulder into the newly repaired door, braced his bare feet in the carpet, and shoved. The door opened slowly as Bill pushed Patrick out of the way. Arya scurried away, and Dottie tried to peer inside to catch a glimpse of the terrible monsters which had plagued her foster brother so. "Dottie, step over here out of the way," Monica instructed. She gestured to the space in front of herself, and Dottie moved into it. Bill reached down through the opening he'd managed to create. He grabbed Patrick's pajama shirt and pulled him sideways until he had moved him enough to open the door the rest of the way. It was too dark inside for Dottie to see anything. Patrick's nightlight had gone out. "Got him," Bill grunted, heaving Patrick up into his arms. Dottie felt relieved, but only for less than a second. For no sooner had Bill stepped away from Patrick's room, embracing the scared child, than Monica shoved Dottie forward, sending her tumbling into the darkness. Without a word, Monica slammed the door shut. "No, help!" Dottie cried, throwing herself into the door. Her hand searched and located the doorknob. It wouldn't turn. Horrified, Dottie realized Bill had replaced the doorknob with one which locked on the outside, and for some reason, Monica had locked her in. She yelled, "What are you doing? Why? Why? Please help me!" A crackle of static sounded behind her, and she turned. All she could see of the walkie-talkie on Patrick's nightstand was its red power light. The static hissed louder and louder until the device reached its full volume. Dottie shrunk down against the bottom of the door, just as Patrick had. They had traded places, but more damningly, had traded fates. Dottie's trained helplessness held her in place even as she began to sense the shadows moving. She heard the air coalescing in front of her, felt its creeping draft on the backs of her hands and the bottoms of her feet. They were coming. The nightmare monsters. "Please, Monica, Bill, Patrick, somebody open this door." She reached up and tried to open it again, but it was still locked. "Stay still," a deep voice commanded through the walkie-talkie. "What are you?" Dottie yelled into the air, which continued to twirl in front of her. She slapped at the door, again pleading with the Stansfields. "Let me out, please, I'm sorry, please let me go." She could hear them out there now, bickering. Patrick's voice was nearing explosive pitch. The main argument seemed to be between he and Monica, though Dottie could not spare much attention to try to make out what they were saying. Suddenly, the static hiss ended, and the walkie-talkie's dull red light, the only light in the entire room, went out. The air stopped moving. Dottie held her breath, not wanting it to give her away. She could sense something now looming in front of her, examining the room with senses unknown. To her left, near where Patrick's bed should be, she sensed another presence. This one seemed smaller, yet equally sinister. She could see them all at the same time, with her eyes open or shut, hear them despite the family arguing outside the door, and sense their movements on her exposed and covered skin. They were everywhere, including in her mind. They were not reaching for her. They were reaching for something inside her. They were, it seemed, clawing for her very soul. Was this the reckoning her parents had warned her about? Was this how God was punishing her for disobeying the teachings of his prophet Mara Walker? Her soul would be devoured, gnashed by demons. Was this the price everyone paid for watching movies, for reading Harry Potter? But it was more than that. She had conspired against Bill and Monica with their son. She had plotted with him against their direct wishes. She had disobeyed. Perhaps this was the most serious crime for which she had been sentenced. But no, she simply could not believe that. She observed her own habitual pattern of thought as it ticked through her brain, but she could not internalize it. It was too discordant, too dissonant from the reality she'd experienced. Dottie had never known such internal conflict before, and for the first time in possibly her entire life, she broke out of the entrenched ruts in her mind. She reached up for the light switch, but was not surprised when it did nothing. There was a window on the other side of Patrick's bed. If she could get to it, it could shed some light on the creatures and possibly offer a route of escape. If only the bed was all that stood in her way. "I'm not who you want," she shouted at the invisible monsters. Standing, she pounded again on the door several times, yelling, "The child you want is out there. While you're at it, take his parents too." A snarl projected from the smaller creature into Dottie's mind froze her momentarily. Evidently, she was not the only one who heard it. Hearing the beast triggered Patrick to yell from outside the door, "Quick, Dottie, they're gonna get you!" An invisible hand clawed from the darkness and gripped Dottie's wrist, almost instantly numbing her hand with its strength. "Help!" she screamed as the hand yanked her forward into the obscure blackness. The creature released her after flinging her down on all fours. Her shoulder brushed against the foot of Patrick's bed, and she clambered onto it. The curtain was only a couple of feet away. If she only knew exactly where it was, she could surely reach it. She needed light, but everything the Stansfields owned required electricity. At home, she knew where to find a gas lamp at any given moment. Damn this modern society. Maybe they're not really sinners, but they are really stupid. She let this vitriol fuel her thoughts. It had the unexpected effect of clearing her mind, plowing roads to allow ideas to flow more freely. And that was when Dottie remembered the glow stick Patrick gave her. She did not have it with her now, but she remembered where he retrieved it from. "I keep a few of these under my pillow at all times because the monster can turn off the lights." She dove forward, but her hand only grazed the pillowcase before one of the powerful hands caught her left ankle and tugged her back. The second monster made a pass at her arm. She swung the arm at the creature instead. She felt it recoil, but it recovered quickly. The big one holding her ankle tried to grab her other leg, but Dottie lashed out with a kick. She felt it connect, but since she could only sense the beast and not see it, she didn't know where her blow landed, only that it made the monster release her ankle. "Bill, it's taking too long. You need to get in there," Dottie heard Monica say as she dove for the glow sticks again. This time, she found one. She sat up and pulled her legs in close. Bill and Monica were now arguing again. While they were distracted, Patrick yelled, "Go out the window, Dottie!" Dottie heard the sharp smack of Patrick paying the price for insolence, a sound she could never mistake or forget. "Get in there," Monica snarled. It was now or never. Dottie struggled with the glow stick at first, twisting it instead of bending, but finally she heard a pop and saw a vein of neon pink light appear. She bent it further, felt it crackling in her hands. It emitted a saturating pink glow, banishing some shadows and darkening the rest. The two dark shapes Dottie had most feared and expected to see retreated into corners, the big one into Patrick's partially opened closet, and the smaller one under the bed. She saw only the formless silhouettes of each before they disappeared. They left vacancies in Dottie's mind as well. She no longer felt them invading her thoughts. All the same, she turned her attention to the window. She pulled away the curtain. Moon and starlight spilled in. Bill opened the door. Dottie unlocked the window. Bill rushed forward. Dottie cranked the window open. Bill lunged. Dottie tugged at the screen, but before she could pull it away, she was dragged, kicking and screaming, back to the doorway. "Put her in her room," said Monica. "Already on it," said Bill. Patrick tried to follow him, but Monica held him back. Dottie would never speak to Patrick in person again. The following morning, Monica let Dottie out of her room. She said that Patrick would be staying upstairs because he didn't feel well. Dottie assumed his parents had told him to stay there so they could try to brainwash her into believing her memory of the night before was wrong. Fortunately, Dottie would be spared their cruel lies by a surprise visit from Hallie. She had a police officer with her. "Yes, Hallie, thank you, Dottie cheered as Bill let the social worker and police officer in. "How did you know? Who told you?" "That's her?" the officer asked Hallie. Hallie, with sorrowful eyes, nodded. Dottie asked, "What's going on?" "I called her this morning," said Monica, entering through the doorway under the stairs. "I told them how you've been making threats to hurt Patrick. We're here to take you back into state custody while your case is examined," Hallie explained. "Dottie, will you please come with us and cooperate?" "Of course," said Dottie. "But that's a lie. They're liars. I would never say I would hurt Patrick. It was them who tried to hurt me. They're just trying to shut me up." "See what I mean?" Bill asked Hallie. "Was she like this before?" Hallie refused to say anything, but the officer muttered, "A kid with that background's going to have some issues." Hallie shot him a look. "Just go with them, please," said Monica. "If you go easy, maybe we won't press charges." Dottie skewered her with her eyes. Hallie said, "This officer's only here to make sure this goes smoothly, Dottie. Can we make that happen?" Wordlessly, Dottie left the Stansfields' house. Over the course of the next hour, Dottie gave Hallie her version of events. It saddened her to admit it, but Hallie understood what had worried Bill and Monica. Dottie sounded out of her mind. However, something about the way Dottie told the story with so much conviction and consistency made Hallie believe the underlying truth of it. Something bad had happened to her in that house. Plus, Dottie described in detail a phone call Monica had with Hallie about potentially removing her from the home. That phone call, Hallie assured her, had never actually happened. But why would Dottie lie about it? She wouldn't. So, did Monica fake it for some reason? The next time Hallie received an order for a placement at the Stansfields, she by chance discovered a clerical error in their renewal paperwork, which invalidated their license until the error could be resolved. Hallie never heard from them again. As for what happened to Patrick, he was fine, it turned out. He wrote an email to Dottie when he found her college email address in a university directory when he Googled her. He spent some of his message apologizing for his small role in trapping Dottie with the monsters, but he also explained how his parents had only been trying to save him. They had conveniently been registered as a foster home before everything with Patrick's nightmare monsters began and let the license lapse. After his torment began, they simply renewed their license and accepted their first placement, Dottie. He wrote, "My parents pretended not to believe in the monsters. They wanted me to convince you to help me so they could sacrifice you in my place. That night, when they pushed you into my room, they tried to make me think I would be carried off to be tortured for eternity if I didn't go along with their plan and let you get taken," he wrote. Dottie could identify with that part. It summed up why she had gone along with everything she had at home, too. He continued, "They were just going to pretend you ran away. I know it's a lot to ask, and I don't expect you to forgive them entirely, but please don't think of my parents as evil people for what they did to you. They didn't want to hurt you. They wanted to save me. I don't agree with how they did it, but I can understand why. I hope you can too." Finally, he provided some closure. "You're probably wondering what happened with the monsters after you left, right? I mean, not to sound like a narcissist, but you must have wondered if I made it, right? Well, obviously I did. Because of your bravery, And I'm not just saying this. Those shadowy things didn't ever have the same power over me again. Don't get me wrong, they still scared the crap out of me, but I had enough courage to get away after that. I started going into the room you used and sleeping in your bed. I just remembered you and how strong you felt. It was almost like still having you around. Anyway, eventually the monsters just stopped appearing. I'm not even sure when exactly it stopped. They became an afterthought, then nothing at all. That's all for now. Hope life has treated you fairly since you left. It'd be about time. Take care. Patrick. Dottie smiled. She had forgiven Patrick long ago and couldn't wait to tell him. She wrote a long and touching letter, imbuing every nuanced emotion she felt during the process. But at the end, she had to add one quick line to thank Patrick for a small role he had played in helping her feel braver at night too. "I almost forgot," she wrote. "Thanks to you, I've got a pack of glow sticks wedged under my pillow now. Haven't needed them yet, but it's good to know they're there. Take care as well. Dottie." You made it out. Congratulations. If you enjoyed the story, please rate, like, review, or subscribe. For ad-free episodes and bonus Into the Woods episodes, become a patron with the link in the description. You can also support the show by buying merch. That link is also in the description below. To stay up to date, follow me on Instagram at The Warning Woods. If you feel ready, meet me here next week for another journey into the Warning Woods. Thank you for listening.